Ladies and gents, it's part 3 of the daily. Kit Kat Bar. That's a hard song to get out of your head, I'm going to admit. We're looking at Naniwa, who delightfully helped save the daily because I could not figure out what I wanted to talk about, and he just gave me these games from his personal rep collection. Yes! So thanks to him. In the parts 1 and 2, we got the chance to look at some of the specific cool stuff of the opening. In particular, we discussed how Naniwa was managing to beat things that we didn't see. It's very easy to do something like, look at how this strategy in this game is beating that strategy that the enemy's doing. I get it. It's a little harder to envision something like, okay, well, this build worked against an early expand. Would it work against a 2-Rax? And it's important that we end up discussing those sorts of things, because that really, I think, is the key to what makes Naniwa such a good player, is that he just has an answer for like 50,000 possible openings, even though he will only commonly encounter 2 or 3. So right now, we see a pretty even situation right now, where the Terran player just did a big attack. We managed to not really... I gotta let in Rob. This is Rob from the After Hours Gaming League, you guys. He just got here. Alright, hold on. Stay here. Make sure Rob gets in, and when he gets in, he shuts all the doors. It never occurred to me that I have roommates. Never occurred to me that I could just have my roommates let him in. Send him in when he arrives, Kyle. Thank you. All right, cool. So we're looking at this point at a pretty normally timed TVP where the Terran made a huge push and it didn't really work. It didn't really kill the expansion. You can come in. You can come in. That's fine. Yeah, he didn't really end up killing off the expansion. This is Rob from Blizzard. He's going to be helping me on the HGL cast afterwards. Yeah. Yeah, what was I talking about? Oh yeah, the Terran attack didn't exactly work, but didn't exactly fail either. And this is generally a pretty important situation to be in this matchup. Just to note that your end game is actually to get those 3/3 upgrades up. And that's generally, when you're doing this sort of Stalker Colossus style, one of the big linchpins to your to when you should be attacking. And of course, one of the last things we end up seeing is that Zealot Charge Twilight Council stuff. At this point in time, we can see why we loved getting that early Dark Shrine Immencio up, because the early Dark Shrine will allow us both to defend these drops with these Warp-Ins, but we can easily just throw down a DT and begin checking up here. It's a Zealot for Naniwa, but DTs can always poke around and do a little bit of damage, a little bit of scouting stuff. As we poke around, it's back to the usual sort of mixture. Getting the Colossi afterwards. Remember with this really fast robotics facility, how we got 2 early Colossi, and then we started to get Immortals, and this freed up gas for us to continue these upgrades and to get Blink. Well, now that we have all that shit out of the way, it's time to make a lot of Colossi. Aw, yeah! So we're just doing that. Continuing to scout every single expansion, and this is the thing where in 1 out of every 100 games, the Terran will actually be there. Notice how he's even sending the Zealot to here. This seems obviously dumb, but still, 1 out of every 100 games, you'll find a base up here, and then you'll get a free kill on it, and you'll secure yourself a little bit more of a win. On these 3 bases that we see Naniwa have, it's a pretty standard looking composition, getting the Templar archives up. Still only on the 8 gateways for most of the time, has only just recently added on a pair of extra gateways. I think back here somewhere. Yeah, memory's so good. Memory's so good. And this can be marginally tricky, securing yourself another base. I would say that the most important way to secure another base in a TVP after there's been this sort of weird battle exchange is to have map control. Just have some vision of this, and having a lot of units here and a lot of units here to defend when you throw down an expansion. That's a pretty comfortable way to do it passively. But we're seeing Naniwa instead do the most basic way of defending an expansion ever. When you attack, expand. Easy peasy. Yeah. When you attack, expand. Excellent. When you are gearing up to get your fourth, get a second robotics facility. And one general comment before I stop just pausing is that it's a lot of money to just get basic upgrades going. Like this costs a lot of resources. The range costs a lot of resources. Building the Twilight Council, getting both of those upgrades costs money. Building both the forges and getting those upgrades 3 times in a row costs a lot of money. So what does that mean? As we're getting all these upgrades, we get these numbers ingratiated in our mind like, ooh, 8 gateways on 3 bases. That just gets stuck in our brain, and we sort of just go for that. That's our general standard. But you have to remember at the late game to way overbuild unit production structures. We don't have to build forges anymore. We don't have to get upgrades anymore. We can easily replace all that money we were spending on those with a metric ton more gateways. Yeah. I also really like the way that Naniwa does these sorts of positionings, where if you actually just look at his control groups, Control 2 is everything that is not a stalker, and Control Group 1, it's like the action squad. They're the ones really going out and doing some cool stuff. Now, I like the fact that Naniwa's not attacking because he knows his opponent is only on these 3 bases. This Zealot that just kind of made the big march around to all these other spots just saw nothing, but that's a huge decision point for Naniwa. He knows that he could just afford to sit there for a little bit, accumulate a couple more dudes, and go in for an attack. He's leaving these High Templar back here. He can wait for Storm. This is just pure awesome by Fo Yu. He just lands and just builds a freaking Hellion. That's pretty sweet. And it actually does cause Naniwa to pull a decent number of probes. And finally, he just goes for the big attack with Storm and all. But he is going to do a little bounce back and forth. He just doesn't need to attack until he's absolutely positive. The one thing that I would probably do before the attack is obviously wait for as many upgrades as possible, but also make sure that the money in the bank means that you can replenish pretty comfortably. Naniwa is off to the races. Alright, we got about another 10 minutes left on this game. Yeah, as he's moving out, aw yeah, where are the other gateways? There they are. Just adding on a lot more gateways, leaving behind a Templar or 2 just to charge up some energy. And at this point in time, everything that we have seen Naniwa do has been anti-drop, 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 checking for more expansions, checking around. And the big engagement occurs. Yo, go, 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 go. Nice storming, losing a couple things. SC Fo Yu just has really good EMPs. Kills everything off. And this is not bad. This is actually not terrible. Your gut is to puke and to cry and to shiver and be sobbing tears on your face, but this is actually good. The reason is that, well, I'll be honest, it could have been a little bit better, but this is actually not an unusual or terrible situation to be in at all because of the amount of gateways that we had up. The fact that there's no 4th base for Terran puts us in a great position as long as we can hold this counter swing. Puts us in phenomenal condition. This is kind of why I would have liked to have these up a little bit sooner. But look at this. We just had 1 round of units, and here comes round number 2 back in. And we basically look like we have almost enough stuff to be able to defend this. Obviously, it would help to have had 1 or 2 Templar behind, so that way we can have some extra Stormers up there. But we can warp in so freaking many units so quickly that this sort of counter swing is very common. It's very much so to be expected. And tragically, it ends up being just a little bit too much for Naniwa. So this engagement here that ended up being, it looked like the clear game-ending, clear losing moment right here. And even with this thing doing a powerful enough swing to kind of create that, oh god, I really messed this game up, didn't I? Honestly, the fact that there's no 4th expansion anywhere means that a lot of the decisions we made beforehand are very comfortable very good, correct decisions to have made. All we needed to do was get this engagement slightly better, at a little bit better of an angle, and when this counter swing happens, we hold it off, and then we're 4 bases to his basically 1 base down here at the bottom left. And Naniwa is going to make very simple, clean, clear decision. Whenever you are way far behind and you are starting to panic, just don't make that many Stalkers. Zealot, Archon, Colossus, got some Stormers in there as well. Making them Colossi 2 at a time. And the Stalkers are the one thing that you build last to round up the army, but getting a lot of Zealots and Archons pretty darn cheap. And just moving out forward. 4th expansion's up, and now it's time to start getting a little bit concerned. Now it's time to start being a little bit more aggressive. But this is a pretty easy army to replenish with. Notice how many Stalkers there are? 5, not many. Food count seems even, but this army is nearly impossible to defend. And I actually think that Naniwa is going for this army because Naniwa has almost no Stalkers, which means that Naniwa's army is not very good at dealing with counterattacks or drops, but it is really good in direct engagements. So with this composition, it's probably a little bit safer, actually, to chase down this army than it is to do something like, oh, his army's here? Well, I'm going to take my, my Archon Colossus force here. When you do that, it makes all your extra expansions feel really vulnerable. And you can do some base trading stuff and push you into a yucky spot. That went well. And the rest of these engagements continue to go pretty dang well as well. Now, what I want to point out, before we end up hopping into some questions, is did you see how... Let's actually come to this moment right here. Just a smidge later. Let's pretend that you just walked in the room. Rob. Oh, Rob. All right, let's pretend that you just walked into the room. You didn't see this expansion die. You didn't see this battle here where Naniwa died. You just came in right here. What would you have seen? You would have seen a Protoss player with, wow, how much gas does he have? Wow, he has 5 Archons out there and 6 Colossi. Wow, this looks good. Did Protoss look uncomfortable at any point here? From here to the end of the game? Not really. I mean, massing up, he has a great force. He has 8 Archons, 6 Colossi, and a bunch of Zealots. And he has 4 Stormers. And he literally just walks up here and walks here and kills this off. No challenge. He pulls back. There's some units. They die. Some more units come in. They die really easily. How much army does Naniwa have left over? A ton. It looked pretty good. So what I want to emphasize for this late game stuff is that Naniwa did this great move, taking the 4th base, waiting for a little while, letting his money stockpile, getting up to I think it was 16 gate or no 15 gateways. Yeah, I can add single-digit numbers. He had 15 gateways there, so that way when he did this push, he just knows he needs to replenish for a couple of rounds, not a ton, just a few rounds of extra units. And he's in amazing shape to close the game out. So in terms of a graph, because I envision it nicer when it's mathy, you're kind of getting shoved down as Protoss, you're kind of getting pushed, but you're getting more upgrades, you're getting all your 3-3 and your Zealot legs, so that way, in the very end game, it's almost like trying to push back a spring, where the Terran needs to shove it and push it all the way back down, because the instant Protoss gets a little bit of an edge, boom, it just explodes. So it's kind of like low, 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 shoots really high up. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take questions. Yeah, I like taking questions. Feel free to ask me questions. All right, let's clear the chat. Yeah, clear the chat, clear the chat, clear the chat. All right, awesome. So Timo2 says, Day 9, is it better for Naniwa to try to defend the 4th base or simply sacrifice it? It is really, really hard to give a clear judgment in a lot of circumstances. In that particular one, I think it very clearly should have been a defend. I think absolutely needed to be a defend the base. It could have been a little bit cleaner if there was like 1 or 2 Templar up in the top right. Hero leaves a lot of Templar around like that. But the reason I think that it's kind of a clear defense is that with that style of play, where we get maxed, we have 15 gateways, we have our 3-3 done, your goal is to do one huge attack and then re-warp in back to max and win with that second wave. So when he comes to attack, in my head I'm going, well, yeah, it's my second wave attack. I'm supposed to try to defend that expansion in that spot. Obviously, if he just has way more stuff than you, you just look and you go, oh, I guess he has more stuff than I do, so I'm just going to let it die. But still, it's really important to know what the basic goal of your build is, win with that second wave, and then when his attack comes, you say, well, cool, I'm just going to use my second wave to defend that. So I like that. I like that. Let me see here. So my name is Yui. Says, Day 9, why do you think so many Protoss players put their tech in their main? I mean, how many times have we seen the Twilight Council get picked off by a drop or right before legs or blink finishes? And of course, the ++ upgrades at the forges. Why not put it at the natural? One thing, I will answer this question and all questions in its class. That is such a clear answer that Yui's basically saying. He's like, well, it seems like it would be safer to put somewhere else. Absolutely, trust your intuition. There's this weird idea a lot of people have where they'll be like, well, I'm silver. I mean, that means that my opinion in StarCraft 2 has 0 credibility at all. No, it doesn't. There's great ideas that have come out of players of all leagues. And if there's something that you say out loud and it seems to make sense to you, then just trust that and go with that. It's okay to have doubt, in everything you say. To be something like, okay, this is the standard opening. A lot of people do it, but kind of feels like maybe it shouldn't be. I'm going to keep doing it, comfortable that maybe I should be doing something else, but I'm just going to do it. So there's nothing wrong with these sorts of questions, like why not just put it in the natural? Yeah, I'm even thinking something like, why not just put it more towards the center of your base? So that way if he's coming in at any angle, it's going to be hard for him to get to the center unless he really wants to make that drop vulnerable. But I think players probably should think about their positioning probably a little bit more thoroughly. Also, in defense of putting things like behind your main mineral line, where we see a lot of snipes happen, often players will put all their tech there thinking he's either going to never be able to get that far back into my base, or he's going to be so far in the back of my base trying to pick these things off that it puts me in favorable position X. It puts me in a predictable position that I can work with. Let's go ahead and take one more question. 2 more questions because I want to answer this one really fast. S-Mob says, Day 9, how would we deal with Banshees earlier on a rush around 7 minutes or so? It didn't look like Naniwa had an answer. Let me point something out really fast. Hey, this is my question grabber, and also it's Anna's birthday, so wish her happy birthday. Excellent. This is not the game. There we go. Coming back to... By the way, 7 minutes and 30 seconds is generally about as early as we can, as we'll end up seeing a Banshee arrive. If he builds a command center pretty early on, I want you to note that it finishes up a little bit after the 5-minute mark, which means he should have some sort of preparations in place heading out to this expansion before 6 minutes, or before 6 minutes and 30 seconds. We should start really kind of seeing some kind of expo attempt done. If you're in Naniwa's shoes and you see absolutely nothing, you just see a wall in and some Marines, you don't know, is he early expanding or is he going for this fast Banshee? Well, I'm waiting. It's 6 minutes. He hasn't done anything yet. Is it early expand or fast Banshee? The great part is you only have to, or you can wait till up to the 6-minute mark to comfortably just build a robotics facility. We have the flexibility to do this because we got 2 gas geysers so freaking early. We can easily plop down a couple or one robo. I mean, hell, we're building nothing but sentries early on. We just build a robo instead of this sentry. Hell, we can wait even longer than that. We would build right around now. We would build right when our gateways are wrapping up. We have plenty of gas to be able to do this. That, in my eyes, is really one of the brilliant aspects about the build. That you just have the resources that you need. I think the reason this whole build can go to this gas-heavy route is because you just don't build an early Zealot and an early Stalker. That's a lot of extra minerals you get. I mean, hell, if you just build one Stalker, it's 125 minerals that you can't spend getting an earlier gateway, or building 2 probes from each nexus, or building a pylon when you really needed to. So, cool stuff. Last question. Last question. Pretty much everyone is typing yo. Crocs asks a very broad question. Technique or theory? Is it more important to focus on things like multitasking, technique, or things like army positioning, which is a theoretical thing? So there's a difference between, should I just work on probes and pylons, or should I be working on developing the most Gosu strategy in the whole world? What I would say is that obviously both are important, but far more important than whatever it is you're working on, just make sure it's like one thing you're working on. It's pretty dang hard to manage like a couple of things at once, and a lot of pros and experienced veteran players will be saying things like, oh yeah, I really got to macro better, yeah, I got to reposition this stuff there, I got to do this better, and they're talking about execution, they're talking about decision making, they're talking about strategy, and that takes years and years and years to be able to do that, so don't force it. Just work on one at a time, and just declare out loud that that's what you're working on. Especially for the multitasking thing. If you're working on multitasking, screw trying to do new things with strategy. Try to force yourself not to think about strategy. Pull your brain away from the strategic decisions. Even though in-game, the game is trying to rip your focus, like, should I get Templar right now? Tell me, damn it. And you're like, maybe Colossi. Ignore all that and just try to make sure you're building probes and pylons and keeping that money under 500. And with that, ladies and gentlemen, it is now time to do the After Hours Gaming League Week number 5 cast with Robert Simpson, who's right there. Also, for next week's Fun Day Monday, please submit to me a game where you do massive amounts of damage with burrowed banelings, baneling drops, baneling landmines, regular baneling flanks, but in particular, them burrowed banelings are what I'm looking for. And it can't just be one cool explosion. I'm talking like 15 huge blowout, destructoid type things happening in the game. Submit it to Monday at day9.tv. Now it's time to cast the After Hours Gaming League, you guys. After Hours Gaming League with Blue Sky Black Death.
Oh, yeah.
It'll... yeah, nice. That was well timed. It's going to be beginning in 13 minutes. We're going to be casting Facebook